Alrighty. Let's dive into the reverb and delay, my friend, for this indie pop vocal mix. Now, right after I hopped off of the last video when we talked about EQ, compression, and saturation, I realized I forgot to do something, and that was put a de-esser on the vocal. So before we move on to the reverb and delay, I'm just going to come in here very quickly and add a de-esser, just so we can tame some of these S's here. So use whatever de-esser you have. Most DAWs have a de-esser stock, or if you have Waves de-esser or any de-esser whatsoever in your DAW should be fine. So let's see what we got.
Won't you stay? Whoa, Jessica, Jessica. Oh, won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh, yeah. For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while.
Yeah, that's fine for now. When it comes to things like de-essing, I don't like to go too crazy with the first plugin or my first attempt at it. We can always add another de-esser once we get towards the end of the mix, and then once we hear it on some different speakers, it'll be able to tell us, or at least it'll give us more information as to whether or not we need to maybe even remove some of the de-essing. Maybe it sounds a little bit too much like this, and we don't want that either. So that is what we did there. So I'm happy with that for now. So now let's do the really fun part. This is probably my favorite part of vocal mixing, and that is screwing around and just having fun with reverbs and delays. And we're going to start with reverb specifically, and then we'll get into delays in the back half of this training. So this isn't a YouTube video, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do some exploring in this video. And I'm going to walk you through a few different types of reverbs, and I don't know yet which one I'm going to use because I'm just recreating the song. I'm remixing this dry vocal from scratch, and I'm by no means referencing, and I'm not looking at what I did on the original version of this vocal. I'm starting this from scratch, and I'm walking you through my process for creating an indie pop type of vibe. Now, we already talked about this in the intro phase of this module, where I walked you through some of the concepts you need to know and some basic understanding of what it means to mix vocals and what it looks like. And one of the things we talked about was return tracks and effects channels and those types of things for setting up reverbs and delays specifically. So the reason that's important is because I'm not going to add a reverb directly onto the lead vocal track like we did the compression and the EQ and the saturation and all of that. Those plugins were added directly on this lead vocal chain here. Instead, we are going to go ahead and set up what's called a return track. Now, depending on your DAW, it might have a slightly specific term. Like in Studio One, for example, they're called FX channels. But the concept of a return track, or you could say a send, is still the same. So what I'm going to do now, and this is just a cool little technique or a cool little feature in Studio One, is I can actually drag in. So I'm going to start with Valhalla Vintage Verb. That's just my go-to reverb. And what I can do is drag it. I'm not going to drag it into here like I did with everything else. Instead, I'm going to drag it into the sends on this lead vocal, and it's going to automatically now create a return track for us instead of me having to come over here, add effects channel, drag the reverb to that, and then come in here plus send to that. Instead, I could do it all at one snap of a finger and just sweep, swap, and beepity bop, and we are good to go. So as it is right now, at just throwing the reverb on here, here's what it sounds like.
Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh, won't you stay?
So that is our send. We're sending a copy of this lead vocal to this return track with this reverb on it. Now, for now, I'm going to leave this as simply Valhalla because I don't know yet. Actually, no, I'm going to change my mind. We're going to do some experimenting, guys. This is going to be really fun. So the first return track here is going to be a room reverb. And then the second return track is going to be like a hall reverb. So for those two, I'm going to start with Valhalla. And then I'm going to use, actually, let's just stick with Valhalla for this entire thing. That way we don't jump around a bunch of different plugins. Valhalla is a very versatile plugin. And then we'll go from there. So We have 3 different sends now, 3 different return tracks, and I'm going to call this the room reverb, the hall reverb, and the plate reverb. And we are going to explore and see which one of these 3 types of reverb do we want as our main reverb. Now, for the most part, when you're talking about pop vocals, these 3 types of reverb are really the 3 that you want to get used to and you want to really get a feel for, and you want to understand what is the sonic space. What does it feel like? What does a room reverb sound like versus a hall versus a plate? Beyond that, you don't really have to dive beyond that for right now. If you can just master these 3 reverbs, you are going to be an incredible mixer, at least with regards to this isolated area of vocal reverb. So now let's begin by turning off. Let me just drag this yippity yop up here and focus on one send at a time. So first let's dial in and see if we can find a room sound, a room reverb effect that sounds good to us. Even though we might not want to use a room reverb at the end, let's find a room reverb that we think sounds good. Now, I'm actually going to mention something here before I do that, though, is what we're looking for in this phase of the process is a primary reverb. What often happens is I will layer a couple reverbs throughout the process of a mix, and I might send my lead vocal to a plate reverb, and then also a little bit of room, and then also maybe a bit of slap delay, which I'm sure we'll get into slap delay, or we'll at least experiment with it. So, but I don't want you to think that way for right now. We're only focusing in on if this vocal had only one reverb, which one would we want? So that is what we're gonna do, okay? So now let's listen through some room reverbs and see what we can find and see if we like anything. So I'm just gonna loop the song, here we go.
The embers on your tongue, they're burning my eyes. She's the prettiest firefly
Okay, I'm gonna play it with the instrumental.
on fire. She's on fire.
So let's just go to their rooms. Oh.
For the sirens call, just the stillness of you breathing slow. She's so beautiful. Right here, right here, right now.
Now, I just thought about this and I want to mention this. One of the things that I often fall prey to, and that I'm trying to just not let it affect me, is when I'm browsing through presets, and especially, for example, here on the room reverb presets, and when I see the name of it says Fat Snare Room, I'm like, oh, that's for a snare drum. Just skip past it. It's not sounding good on the vocal, obviously, because it's made for a snare drum or whatever. It's like, no. Marcus, what the hell are you doing? It doesn't matter what the name of the preset is. It matters what it sounds like. So try to not get distracted, and I'm going to try to not get distracted by the name of the preset and simply listen to what I think sounds the best.
Won't you stay? Whoa, Jessica, Jessica. Oh, won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh, for you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. This is all I ask of you now, Jessica. A subtle smile on your face, it sings melodies to me. There's just one thing that's unclear. I don't know what you're doing here. Turn the lights down low, just the stillness of you breathing slow.
Yeah, when I was thinking about and listening to this, one of the things that I know that I don't really want is when it comes to the primary, the main reverb, we don't want a short room reverb type of effect. This song doesn't feel like that is going to be the vibe. And so I'm probably going to start with this dark vocal room preset because it is a longer room sound at 1.6 seconds on this decay time.
She's so beautiful.
And then one of the important things when you're messing around with reverbs is you want to check and see if you can do some EQ maneuvering to get that reverb signal itself to fit better in the mix. Because sometimes the reverb will have way too many high frequencies.
But I don't know.
Now, that might not be too much, but it might be. Often, it can be a great idea to just warm up the reverb by way of removal of those high frequencies.
What she's doing here.
Notice how it's much more of a blanketed sound on that reverb channel.
Anyway.
And then another important thing is the low cut as well. So as you can see, I'm rolling everything off all the way up to like 400 hertz. So in a normal EQ, now I could do this as well. And even when I do the EQs within the plugins, I will still often add an EQ after the fact anyway and do something like this, right? So visually, this is what those cuts look like, something along these lines. And so if the reverb plugin that you're using perhaps doesn't have the ability to use EQ within the plugin itself, this is the beauty of putting your reverbs on a return track like this, because then you can add like an EQ and you can affect only the reverb signal itself. So once you've done some EQ on it to kind of find that sweet spot, let's bring this back to 0.
Right now. Won't you stay?
There's without it.
Jessica.
And then here's with it.
Won't you stay? Jessica.
It adds really nice life to it, doesn't it? I love that. Okay, so now we have a little room reverb that we can play with. Maybe this will be the main one, maybe it won't. Let's try some other ones. The next reverb that we'll talk about here, and let's go ahead and mute this room. We'll talk about the hall reverb now. So let's turn that one on and let's browse through some hall reverbs using Valhalla Vintage Reverb. Here we go.
For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say.
Okay, why Valhalla? Why do you do this? If I'm on halls and I click next, I want you to go to the next hall preset. Golly. Okay, now I think, yeah, so this is an important thing when you're flipping through presets like this. Notice how the mix knob here is only halfway through. So the reason that it's there is because they're assuming that the default move for this preset is going to be as a direct insert on your vocal track, which is why the mix is here. Whenever you have a reverb or delay or anything on a return track, that mix has got to be at 100%. Otherwise, you're just turning up the volume. I mean, in a way it's okay, but there's no reason ever to do that because you're just turning up the volume of the dry signal, plus you're adding the reverb as well. Because of the way the reverb is isolated on a return track, always make it 100%. So as I'm flipping through these presets, I might need to come in here every now and then and just bop this over to 100. Okay, here we go.
Won't you stay?
So nice, so smooth.
Won't you stay?
And it does it again. My goodness. Okay, Valhalla, you're making me angry.
Oh, Jessica. For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. This is all I ask of you now, Jessica.
really, really, really like this one. How many reallys can I throw in here? I love the sound. It's
For you
dope.
say goodbye, stay a while. For you say
Now keep in mind, we have it turned up, that way we can really hear the reverb. So as we bring this back down, listen to the effect that it has on the mix. When it's tucked
goodbye,
back.
stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. This is all I ask of you now, Jessica. She's the prettiest firefly on fire. She's on fire for the sirens call.
Now, if we were going for a bit more of an ambient pop sound, which maybe that is where we go, but I think I might make a bonus video at the end of this. Maybe my plans would change. We'll see how this goes. But I'm thinking that I perhaps wanted to make a more typical indie pop type of reverb effect, and then at the end add in a bonus example of what I would do if I was really focusing and aiming for like a dream pop or a shoegaze or more of an ambient type of reverb sound. Then we might really crank this hall reverb.
Just the stillness of you breathing slow. She's so beautiful.
And here again, you can play with that high cut and rolling off those high frequencies, because the difference is massive between here
Right,
and here.
right here, right now. Won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh,
Yeah, so I turned down this decay time a little bit because we are focusing in on a primary reverb. And if this hall is going to have any chance at being the primary reverb for this vocal mix, I don't think we're going to want that decay time to be so long, because if the decay time is really long, the only way I think that the reverb is going to work in this context is if it's a secondary reverb that's turned way down and that acts more of like a pad that's underneath everything. But if we're talking about primary reverbs, then I think we need this decay time closer to where it is right now.
won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh, yeah. Before you say goodbye, stay a while. Before you say goodbye, stay a while. Before you say goodbye, stay a while.
So there's a nice little hall reverb. So now let's compare the room reverb, which is here,
Won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh,
and then here is the hall reverb.
won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica.
The hall reverb definitely is more pronounced. There's a longer reverb tail, right? And as of right now, I think I like the hall reverb a little bit better. So now, one more reverb type that we are going to put on or put up against this vocal is a plate reverb. Now, plates are just great choices when it comes to especially vocals, but really almost anything, especially if you're making pop type music. A plate reverb is just a great default type of reverb. So for this, let's go ahead and go to our plates. Actually, first, let's come over here and turn this on, and then we'll come back here. We'll turn it up a little bit, and we'll see what we can get when it comes to the plate reverbs. So let's start at the top and see where we are.
For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while.
This is an example of, don't look at the name of the preset. It says drum plate, but this sounds kind of dope on that vocal.
This is all I ask of you now, Jessica. For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while.
Are you noticing what the pre-delay does? If you've never messed around with pre-delay on a reverb, notice what happens. Just listen to what happens and really pay attention to the dry vocal when I turn this pre-delay up.
This is so beautiful in here anyway. Won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica.
So a pre-delay is exactly what the word sounds like it should mean. It is a pre-delay, which means the reverb doesn't kick in until after the dry vocal comes through. So that is why when it's here, you immediately hear the reverbed effect on that vocal, versus the more I go this way, the longer that pre-delay, then the more space and the more you can hear the dry vocal, but then the pre-delay, because of the pre-delay, the reverb comes in after, kind of like a delay. It actually is very much like a delay that has a bunch of reverb on the delay, right? I think maybe I want a little bit like that.
For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say goodbye, stay a while. This is all I ask of you now, Jessica.
See how it sounds in the verse?
They're burning my eyes.
This could be really cool if we were going for the Japanese house type of vibe, or even some stuff by the 1975. You hear a lot of these short plates, these plates with not a long pre-delay. The reverb is so embedded immediately into that vocal sound, and it has this crisp plate texture to it, this is the beauty of using plate reverb types. It really creates an interesting tone that works really well often with vocals especially.
She's the prettiest firefly
See, here's without it.
on fire. She's on fire.
You turn it down a little bit.
For the sirens call. Just the stillness of
There's the haw.
you breathing slow. She's so beautiful. Right here, right here, right now. Won't you stay?
Okay, I like the idea of a plate, although I'm beginning to think that we might be able to find a better sound if we browse through some more of these plates. Let me see.
Right, right, right now. Won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh.
Yeah, I think I want a longer plate reverb like this.
They're burning my eyes.
And obviously we'll turn it down.
She's the prettiest firefly on fire. She's on fire. For the sirens call.
And then filter off that top end. Give us a nice warm tone.
Just the stillness of you breathing slow. She's so beautiful.
Now, as you can see here, technically it's in chamber mode, but this is a plate preset. So you can create the plate type of effect using different modes here with this Valhalla plugin specifically.
Right here, right here, right now. Won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh, won't you stay? Oh, Jessica.
Yeah, if we're talking about a primary reverb, if we only had to pick one, I am definitely going to pick the plate. It just feels very versatile. It feels very much like we can keep this in from the start of the song to the end of the song. Now, that's not to say that we won't use this kind of hall reverb at some point during this process, because again, as I mentioned before, I do like to layer my reverbs often, and so we might do that. We'll see. But in any case, that is going to be our starting point, is the plate reverb. So let's come back here, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn or get rid of these sends. And now we have a plate reverb. We're sending the lead vocal to it.
She's the prettiest firefly on fire. She's on fire. For the sirens call.
Maybe a little bit too much slower.
Just the stillness of you breathing slow. She's so beautiful. Right here, right here, right now. Won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh.
Really like what we got going so far, guys. So now that we have the plate reverb and we've settled on that, now let's talk about adding a primary delay to this vocal. So generally speaking, in pop productions, you are going to want at least one delay plugin, but often you'll have perhaps your primary delay that is active throughout the song, and then you might also have a delay that comes in and out, and we might use what are called delay throws, and I might get into that in this video. I'm not sure yet. I haven't decided yet exactly how this is going to look because I'm just walking you through. I'm bringing you along on this journey. So now let's go ahead and let's try some reverb. So now, let me see here. Let's come over here to this, and we'll grab, what is this, Valhalla delay. So now take that to 100%. As you can see, I dragged it directly into the lead vocal area here. And now we have that return track set up for us on a return track. So as we were doing with the reverb, we were trying to find a primary reverb, and now we're trying to find a primary delay. We want to find a delay sound that if it was present from the start of the song to the end of the song, that it sounds good the entire time. It's that type of delay effect.
She's the prettiest firefly on fire. She's on fire. For the sirens call. Just the stillness of you breathing slow. She's so beautiful. Right here, right here, right now. Won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. The embers on your tongue, they're burning my eyes. She's the prettiest firefly on fire. She's on fire. For the sirens call.
Okay, I like this reverb, but I might change my mind because we might not even need a reverb during these verses because it's such an intimate part of the song there. But however, when the chorus hits, I really like the way this delay sounds. I think I said reverb before. I meant to say delay. I really like the way it sounds. One of the favorite features that I have in any of the plugins I own is the ducking feature inside of Valhalla Delay. It's amazing because this keeps you from having to add a compressor to work as a sidechain if you want to duck the reverb when the lead vocal is singing. So generally, and you can research this if you want to, if you're talking about, it's called sidechain compression, and I'll just show you very quickly kind of the basics of what that looks like. So the ducking knob inside of Valhalla Delay is the equivalent of sidechaining this delay channel to the lead vocal. We come in here, we select it, and then wait, is it send or output? With this update in Studio One, I always forget. Anyway, and then you would come in here, and then this, because we're sidechaining this delay signal to the dry vocal, it responds to it and turns down. It ducks the delay. That way the lead vocal, the dry sound, can pop through, and so that they don't kind of so that they don't have equal ultimacy the entire time, but rather when the lead vocal is performing, the delay takes a back seat, and then as soon as the lead vocal is done, the delay comes back to full volume. It's that type of thing, except we don't have to use a sidechain compressor because it's built into the delay plugin itself, which is just a great time saver, and I just love it. See, that's why you feel like you only hear the delay in between the lead vocal phrases. Notice that? It's really cool. I love this. So let's come in here and let me see. Oh, what's interesting, I'm just now noticing this, that it is a random sort of millisecond. I mean, it's obviously not random because they made this preset to sound good across a lot of different applications, I'm sure, but this is not set to the tempo of my DAW. This is just set milliseconds wise. And I think that might be why I really like it, because it's not, 1, 2, 3, 4, locked to the grid when you hear the delay. Instead, it lags a bit. Oh my God, I love that.
For you say goodbye, stay a while.
Oh, or do I?
Say goodbye, stay a while.
Yeah, no, it was pretty cool earlier, but for that part, we really need that in time. So, hey, live and learn. I thought it was going to sound great. I thought I stumbled across some magic, but I'm going to actually switch this to probably a quarter note delay. Let me see. Let's switch both of them. Or here, let's just go to a single mode.
For you say goodbye, stay a while.
Yeah.
This is all I ask of you now, Jessica.
Okay, so now we have the decision to make of, do we want this delay to be a more mono sounding delay or stereo? Now, some of you might just default to, well, stereo is obviously sounds better, right? So you go with stereo, but don't be so fast to rush to judgment on that, because here's what it sounds like in mono.
Won't you stay, Jessica?
And here's stereo. Now, they're both cool, but if you're talking about a reverb that's going to be present the entire time, we can always add stereo delay throws kind of throughout the song if we want to, but I am just a sucker for a mono reverb and a mono delay. Okay, so generally I like to keep my send or my return track faders at 0, so I'm going to come over here and turn down the send on this delay. Now it's a little bit too much high end, I think. I think we just need to warm it up a little bit. I like that better. I like that better. We filtered off a bunch of the high in there. And notice how within the preset, this was filtered off already on the low cut all the way up to 1120. So if you were adding that EQ, those EQ cuts on an EQ like this, it would look something crazy like this. Literally, that is what is coming through on this delay. It's beautiful because it creates a nice lane in the frequency spectrum for that delay to live.
Won't you stay, Jessica, Jessica? Won't you stay, Jessica, Jessica? For you say goodbye, stay a while. For you say.
Okay. I love the way that sounds. There's one more thing I want to try, and this is something that I do a lot, is I will test and I will see, do I want to add a reverb to the delay signal? So we're not adding a reverb like we did here, and we're also not adding a reverb directly onto the vocal track. We are adding a reverb after the delay signal. So on this return track, the delay is already, as of now, it's because the mix is at 100%, the delay is 100% of the sound on this return track. Whatever gets sent through this delay channel return track, it is 100% the delay signal. Since we have that, we can now affect that delay signal in isolation. So what I often love to do is see if we can add some space to the delay signal by adding a reverb, and then we'll dial back the mix knobs. Although sometimes I will want to drench the delay completely in a reverb. But then the problem with that, as you can hear, is it gets lost. You lose clarity on that delay. So we probably don't want to go that far with it. So I'm just gonna ease this in and we'll see what we can find. See, there's without it, here's with it. Back to 0. Now we probably don't want this delay in the verses.
She's the prettiest firefly.
Yeah, but I still like to think of this. I'm still thinking of this as our main reverb. So now what I'm gonna do is do some automation, I suppose. Or do I want to just leave this for a specific video on automation? I think I might. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave the automation for now, and we'll talk about perhaps some delay throws and then automating some of these reverbs and delays to come in and out during different parts of the song. But for now, as we're focusing in on this,
Won't you stay? Oh, Jessica, Jessica. Oh, won't you stay?
see, there's without the reverb and delay, and then here.
Before you say goodbye, stay a while. Before you say goodbye, stay a while. This is all I ask.
Now, finally, you heard it there with in solo with just the vocal. Now, this was intentional, or it wasn't that intentional. I just thought about it now that I've been playing this vocal against the instrumental and the rest of the instrumentation pretty much this whole time when I'm playing around with these reverbs and delays. And why am I doing that? I'm doing that because that's what matters, guys. It does not matter what the reverb or the delay sound like in solo, because guess what? Nobody's gonna listen to your song in solo. So always, by default, listen to your mix, or when you're experimenting with effects, make sure that it actually sounds good in context with everything else. So that is why the majority of the time here, I've just been listening with everything turned on. So,
Jessica, Jessica.
turn these back on.
Won't you stay?
And we could dive into, you know, different ones as well if we wanted to, but I think I'm going to wrap it up for now. And then once we get to the automation phase of this indie pop vocal mix, we'll dial in a more detailed fashion and we'll sculpt these reverbs and delays to really fit the song, and so that every section of the song has the appropriate reverb and the appropriate delay for that section. So, my friend, that is reverb and delay for indie pop vocals. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Now let's dive into the next one.